Hello, everybody. This is Luna calling, luxuriating under never-ending affect. As usual, I'm Val,
And I'm Ol.
and what a road trip it has been thus far. We've made so many pit stops along the way, you know. Luna's encountered quite a lot of friends and different ideas, right? You know, we've been talking about AI, we've been talking about Islamic philosophy, we've had a number of guests. You know, we've had Catherine Everett, we've had Nala Jalla, we've had Ava, you know, to accompany Luna on this long road trip. And, you know, I'm really excited, all because we are at the end of Meditation 6. We're finally going to finish it up. It's the
Hold
last
your
stop.
horses. We're not there yet.
What are you talking about?
You
What?
don't know what's about to happen in this episode, Val. There are some
Oh.
serious problems that are going to stick up their heads, and we think we're gonna. I mean, I'd love to get there. Let's see how we can go, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, like, Descartes' going to come up with an answer, and as usual, he's going to hit a problem with that answer.
Yeah.
Then he's going to try and rework his answer. Then another problem will turn up.
He's just like a never-ending problems generator, right? It's just one of those things, you know. You may think you're done with Descartes, but Descartes is not done with you, right?
Absolutely, and I think, Val, you've just properly defined this discipline of philosophy: a never-ending problem generator.
Yep. I mean, that reminds me, one of the earlier acronyms we used for Luna was Little Understanding, No Answers. And I feel like it's just problem after problem, no answer up. Well, no, actually, I'm being very unfair to Descartes. We've gotten a few answers, you know, along this road trip. We've encountered God.
That's right.
Yeah.
We've encountered the thinking thing ourselves.
There's the thinking thing. We've encountered nothingness. So, you know.
Well, there are answers. The question is are they perfect answers?
Yeah.
Or do we still have some questions?
Yes,
You know?
I think this is one of the things where Descartes has set the bar so high, not only for us, but for himself, right? You know, it's clear and distinct, certain knowledge, right? He doesn't want probability, doesn't want any of that.
That's what he's after. It's the gold standard.
Yes, absolutely.
And talking of answers, I just want to, let our listeners in on a little secret. We've been answered by nature ourselves during this road trip.
What? How so?
Well, because we've been basically shit talking the Seine. You know, we've been like joking about the Seine overflowing, going out onto the quays.
Yeah.
There I am traveling to work in my rubber dinghy up the
Yeah.
Seine like every single day. Do you know what the Seine did, Val?
What has the Seine done? Did the Seine hear us shit talking it?
The Seine did overflow.
It did, yes.
Not only did it overflow,
Yep.
but it went and flooded
Yep.
the actual recording studio in the basement of the American University of Paris, where we were recording our podcast.
Yeah, yes, nature got its own over us, you know, like it forced us out and into a different basement, really, you know.
Exactly. So here we are currently recording in exile
Yeah.
on Rue Grenelle, right next to a Lutheran church. Make of that what you will.
Yeah.
And let it go down on record. The river has spoken.
Yes, well, I mean, this is what happens when you spend this much time disparaging nature and saying that, you know, mind and bodies are distinct things and nature's over there. We're not quite sure what we're doing with it. But I think, you know, I'm hoping in this episode we have something to say about nature, maybe, you know, ask for forgiveness.
Well, I have to say, Val, that the Seine has spoken and we need to answer the Seine. So, dear listeners, in this episode, Val and I are going to perform our very own return back to nature. We're dressed very naturally.
Yep.
We've eaten all natural food on the way in to work today.
Absolutely. So, okay. So, all right. In following in Descartes' usual style, you know, we have to recap. Where have we gotten to at this point, and what is the task that lies ahead of us? You know, we have to settle our accounts of nature. But, okay, so where we left off last week was, okay, so through the argument from sense perception, Descartes has finally gotten to the point where we have certain knowledge that there are external bodies. The world outside does exist, and one of the bodies that he took special consideration of was his own body. What can my own body do? And so following this kind of reconstruction of the universe, you know, and we have to bear in mind, as he's reconstructing this universe, he wants to really give a foundation to the sciences, right? What he wants to know with certainty is that there are material bodies that exist outside of his mind, right? So we've established that. Okay, but what we don't know is what is it about these external bodies? It just seems like they're these kind of, I suppose, ghosts or ciphers that are surrounding him. You know, they're kind of opaque and menacing. We don't really know what these external bodies are yet. We just know that they are out there.
It's a moment of pure paranoia, I have to say, Val.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, because there are bodies that are out there, but he has no idea of what they are and what they're going to do to him.
Yeah. So
he doesn't even know what's going on in his inside his own body. He just knows that he does have a body, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, that was one of the kind of very strange things where he's like, yeah, okay, I have my body, but then I have this, this power of imagination that is this life raft out to the external world, but it's not the same as me. He's hinted towards some kind of unity, but this is the thing we're going to have to keep investigating, right? So the question that he has now, and I quote, is he says, what of the other aspects of corporeal things, which are either particular, for example, that the sun is of such and such a size or shape, or less clearly understood, such as light or sound or pain.
Light or sound or pain, Val?
Yeah.
I mean, what are these things?
Well, I mean, obviously they're all exactly the same kind of external body, right?
But no, they're not. They're not at all.
What are you trying to tell me there's a difference between light and pain?
No, I'm basically saying so you've got corporeal bodies. And You're saying we now need knowledge of the actual properties of these corporeal bodies, right? And he chooses a rather large example, the sun, right? But believe you me, I'm English. I went and moved to Australia.
Oh, yeah.
And my skin can tell you the sun, it is tangible.
Oh,
right?
the sun.
The sun has effects.
Oh, the sun has very definite effects. Anyway, right. I mean, it's a very classic thing to see, the English lobsters on the beaches of Australia.
You're calling me a lobster?
Oh, well, it's not the first time in history an Englishman has been accused.
So, the sun, right, is tangible, okay, albeit I can't actually touch it with my finger, right?
Yeah.
But then he talks about things that are not tangible. Light is not tangible, right? I mean, okay, light touches me. I don't really touch it. It's right when light burns my skin, right?
Okay.
Sound, how is sound tangible?
Oh, surely.
You were a musician. Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, it's the transmission of vibrations through the air that vibrates the bone in my ear. There must be some kind of tangibility to it.
Vibrations, man. It's all in the vibrations.
It's all vibrations,
right? And then there's pain.
Okay, but pain is incredibly tangible, surely.
Well, it's tangible, but it doesn't have a definite size or shape, does it?
Yeah, it's not tangible in the sense of the objects that are physically present around us. It doesn't have a determinate size or shape, as you say.
Yeah, and can I just say to our listeners, when you're reading a philosophical text and there's something odd that strikes you, often that is the thread to be pulled. That's telling you something because. Yeah. Light, fine. He just mentioned the sun. That's a corporeal body. Where does light come from? It comes from the sun. Yeah. Sound, fair enough. As Val pointed out, as a musician, sound is actually vibrations. So it is actually tangible.
Yes.
But pain, I think pain is going to come back for us in this meditation later on, Val. It's a key. Let me say that.
And I mean, this is good because this is one of the questions that came up for me and a friend a few years ago when I was traveling I went to Porto. In Portugal, and one of the kind of running jokes that we were having between ourselves was, what is the wind? We both received university educations. We don't know how it works. It's just this weird ephemeral thing. It's some kind of magic that makes the planes fly that brought us over here. I have no idea what the wind is.
Tell that to a sailor. It's weird and ephemeral. How does an actual sailor navigate if not knowing where the wind's coming from? That's not ephemeral.
Well, I'm just saying I don't know how it works.
What about the Sydney to Hobart race? Tell it to all of those guys.
Oh, yeah. But what kind of knowledge do they have of the wind? They can't point it out to me.
They can have a flag fluttering in the wind. It's a pressure differential. There's
Oh.
like low pressure somewhere, there's high pressure somewhere else, and there's this great rush of air
Yeah.
from the high pressure place to the low pressure place.
I feel like this is a very scientific, very Cartesian way of explaining the grandeur of nature. It's just the thing that causes the waves to crash against the cliffs. It's just a change in pressure differentials.
It's numbers, Val. It's all numbers.
I don't feel like there's nothing sublime about this whatsoever. This is a reduction of the world to just quantitative.
You don't need the sublime. That's going to put you off your lunch. All you need is proper calculations.
Yeah.
I am going to channel Descartes right now and
Yeah.
say the great book of the universe is written in mathematical letters.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Well, okay, well, I'm glad that we've established that the universe is mathematical, but this is where we have to stage, right? We seem to have this problem between tangible, intangible bodies, right?
Yeah.
To answer this question, we're going to have to go back to the much maligned idea of nature or the existence of nature, right?
That's right. As we said, just before, this is where we return to nature. He's got a very simple question, right? And it's great. Like Descartes is helping us orientate ourselves in his fairly difficult text. He's saying, this is my question. How is it that we can acquire certain knowledge of the properties of external bodies? How is it that we can know the nature, the essence of these external bodies, in particular when they're diffuse and omnipresent and slightly intangible bodies like light and sound and pain? Right?
Yeah.
Because, how do we know about these bodies? It comes through the senses.
Yeah.
So this is where the method he takes on in this meditation, and I must admit it's a bit of a surprise, right?
Yeah.
Is this return to nature. And he says, nature is a teacher.
Oh, that's an interesting turn of events.
Nature teaches us, Val.
Okay.
And he says, indeed, just to quote him here,
Yeah.
indeed, there is no doubt that everything that I am taught by nature contains some truth.
Not the whole truth, but it has some kind
It
of
has some
truth
truth,
that is going to
absolutely.
tell us, right?
Yeah. So in order to secure knowledge of the properties and of the real nature of external bodies out there, independent of our minds, Descartes is going to have recourse to what he calls nature's teachings.
What can nature tell us about nature, about ourselves?
I think it's about our bodies, Val.
It's all
That's the
about our
focus.
That's what he wants to know.
That's right. So it's kind of like, what are nature's teachings? Well, it's kind of like an instinctual knowledge.
Yeah.
It's the kind of knowledge that you use when you're, going down a busy pavement on a Parisian boulevard and you're
Yeah.
trying to dodge all the other Parisians who
Yeah.
will not get out of your way.
Yeah, or
They'll
the
jostle you.
or
They'll
the
jostle you.
or the tourists.
That's right.
Depending on where you are in Paris.
And so you're dodging and you're weaving by instinct. That's what he's talking about. That kind of natural know-how, that savoir-faire, that savvy that we have.
The kind of instinctual, spontaneous relationship to navigating the external world. Right?
Yeah, it's what the fancy pants contemporary epistemologists called tacit knowledge.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is very fancy pants.
Well, it's basically, it's knowledge that doesn't like wave its hands around and say, hey, I'm knowledge. It's just like the knowledge that you have without knowing about it. It's kind of silent knowledge.
Yeah, almost like muscle memory, or just
Exactly,
what you get from
exactly.
experience, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so nature is a teacher and contains some truths.
Yeah, but Val, to be honest, like at this moment, all my alarm bells rang, right? And I said, hang on, isn't this precisely the kind of knowledge that he started out meditation one by rejecting with the
know.
radical doubts?
This is, I think this is where he's gone. I think there's this interesting kind of struggle that just is occurring at this point of the meditation, right? Because he really wants to reject all this kind of spontaneous inherited knowledge that he's gotten through his education, from his parents, everything else. But then, but maybe he's displacing it. He's not saying this is the knowledge that I've inherited from people, but nature is telling me something.
That's
right?
right. Yeah. So he's kind of making it, Descartes, he loves to make distinctions.
Yeah.
He's making a distinction between what am I taught truly by nature
Yes.
and what have I inherited from culture, from artificial sources.
So this is the real truth of the world, not just inherited knowledge, right?
And how does he justify this return to nature? He says, I quote, nature is nothing other than God himself, or the ordered system of created things established by God.
I feel like he's pulling a fast one here because he's given us two different definitions of God, right? One is the kind of vision of the creator God.
Yeah.
You know, God is the thing, nature is the ordered system of things created by God,
God
right?
is author.
God is author. That's one. God is separate. God is creator. Or nature is nothing other than God himself, and that's two different things, right? And of course, we know that a certain Dutch philosopher not too long after is going to precisely take up this very definition, that
That's
God
right.
is nothing but nature. Our dear Baruch or Benedictus Spinoza
Absolutely.
is going to take up exactly. But, this is a question, and I think this is very important and something that's going to follow us through, the rest of this meditation. There are consequences that follow from the philosophical choices that you make, right? And it's going to be interesting to see where Descartes lands. Is he going with the creator God model, separate from the earth in some respect, or separate from nature? Or is he going to go with God is nature? And there's certain consequences that are going to follow from this decision, right? What is nature is going to give us different orientations and relationships to what our relationship to the external world is.
Absolutely. I think you're onto something there, Val. I think it really is true that Descartes is struggling between this choice of two different gods, or two different relationships between God and nature, because for sure later on when he starts investigating the actual mechanical functions of the body, he kind of wants to say that it's all good, like it all can be explained materially by matter in motion, and we are made as God designed us because God works through matter in motion.
Yes.
And that's where he seems to lead towards what will then become Spinoza's position later on.
Yes.
But at other moments, he has this terrible trouble because he still believes in this separate, transcendent author God, this God that is good.
Yeah.
And so he's going to say, how is it that our body can dysfunction sometimes if God is good? But,
Yeah.
I mean, that's getting ahead of ourselves. I just want to say at this particular moment, I think his argument here, right, all he's doing right now, all he's doing is he's justifying this choice that he's made to select nature as his teacher, as his professor, right?
Yeah.
And he's basically arguing, I am part of nature. God authored my being.
Yeah.
God ordered me. God is good. Part of my being is knowledge. My natural knowledge, thus, must be good, right? That I think is the sequence. That's the series of consequences.
Okay, but then this raises the question, right? Okay, then what are the teachings of nature then? Because if you've made this decision that, God is the author of nature and then that should be the end. If we want to be investigating does the external world exist? What kind of things exist in it? If God is good, God is a creator, then great. All of my knowledge of the external world is certain because God is good. God's not deceiving me, so I can just go about my business being totally sure of my sense perceptions. Isn't that I feel like we're at the end.
No, Val,
What?
the devil is in the details.
Oh, no, the devil's in the weeds.
That's right. Like, what is it that you know through these teachings of nature? That's the question, right?
So is it so? Oh, yeah. Okay. So teachings of nature that are guaranteed by the existence of the good God. Anyway, this is a question that's just been rattling around in my head as I've been trying to accompany Luna through this meditation.
Well, Luna is going to learn two fundamental things.
Yep.
Like nature, the professor has two teachings.
Okay.
Right? The
Yep.
first teaching is very, very simple, and I think it's something that we can celebrate, right?
Yeah.
Here I'm going to cite Descartes, right? In his actual text, he writes, "There is nothing that my own nature teaches me more vividly than that I have a body,
Aye.
and that when I feel pain, something is wrong with the body, and that when I am hungry and thirsty, the body needs, wait for it,
What?
food and drink."
Perfect. I mean, that is something that everyone can identify with just in its immediacy, right?
Yeah, and Descartes is just saying, dear reader, and we're saying, dear listener, just pay attention to what nature's teaching you.
Yeah.
You do have a body. Sorry about that.
Yeah. And your body tells you when something is wrong. It's when you feel pain that you feel it most intensely. And I was thinking about this as well. Again, these are kind of spontaneous, going back to the kind of spontaneous knowledge, right? This is what the later empiricists like John Locke and David Hume are going to be taking up between the distinction between impressions and ideas, right? Impressions is the much strong, like the impressions that you get from your sense perceptions, right? Seeing the color red as the impression is a lot stronger than recalling the color in your mind as an idea later, right? So it's like, yeah, you know that you have a body because the feeling of pain is very, very intense than later recalling the idea of pain, right?
Yeah, and in the end, this meditation 6, it's all about pleasure and pain.
It is. He's got just a binary or a dichotomy set up, right?
I've got a line from that song. I remember you said once that you weren't around in the 80s.
Yeah, I've been not around in many decades, and the 80s is one of them.
Yeah, now some of our listeners might be able to help me out with this one, but I just remember this line. There's a fine line between pleasure and pain.
Okay.
And I think it was the Divinals.
Well, yes. Okay. And I mean, that makes me think of another song. You were around in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
No, sorry, in the 70s.
Even then.
You were also back then. Of course, there's a thin line between love and hate by the Persuaders.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
So we have this first teaching of nature, and we have, through this first teaching, learnt that we certainly do possess a body, right? How do we learn it? Through the omnipresent sensations of pain and pleasure. Now, you may think, thank you very much, I've got no pain or pleasure at the moment, right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of in neutral. But dear listener,
Yeah.
if you really do pay attention to what's going on in your body, I would argue that actually you've always got a very low grade, really low degree of either pain or pleasure or some kind of mix.
Well, absolutely. Right? And this goes back to the kind of the thinking the body that we were discussing in last week's episode, right? The directing your thoughts and the intentionality. I can tell you for one thing, I'm getting on a bit in my years and carrying over all of the studio equipment. I've got it's flared up an old war wound that I got from my sound engineering days. A little bit of back pain, and I can definitely tell you, dear listeners, that I'm feeling my body right now.
That's right. And this is what Descartes is telling us to pay attention to. I mean, everybody thinks that Descartes is so intellectual, right? They think that the Cartesian subject is just a thinking thing.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, the Descartes of Meditation 6, it's all about feeling.
Yeah.
Feel your body, Val. Yeah. Feel your body.
Listen to what it's telling you. This is because it's telling you a truth, right?
It's teaching you.
It is teaching you.
It's Professor Nature.
So this is the first teaching of nature.
And then he asks, okay, what else does Professor Nature teach me about having a body?
Yeah.
Well, he says, how am I as a mind in my body?
Right. So he's going back. So he's thinking about, this famous problem of, Descartes traditionally taken as, a very strict dualist, mind, body, completely separate. But as we saw and heard rather in the last episode, he's now trying to think the unity of these two things.
Absolutely. So, and I think these passages are absolutely essential for understanding how the mind and the body actually do work in Descartes. So what else does Professor Nature teach me about having a body? Well, here Descartes sets out on, and watch out, I'm going to use a fancy word. He's going to set out on some ontological considerations.
Oh, that famously difficult to describe and define ontology.
Well, it's like the theory of being, the theory of reality, like what is reality made up of?
What
right?
is, what is not.
Exactly. So he's going to ask a very simple question. How am I, as a mind, in my body?
Oh, okay. What is the relationship?
Yeah. So this is what he actually says here. And, again, I'm just going to repeat myself, but against those centuries of detractors, centuries of calumny, of misrepresentations of his teachings, saying that he's so intellectual. Here he is. He actually writes, nature also teaches me by these sensations of pain, hunger, and thirst, that I am not merely present in my body as a sailor is present in a ship, but that I am very closely joined and as it were, intermingled with it, so that I and the body form a unit. How about that, Val?
My captain, my captain. So what? I mean, what does that even? What is this comparison supposed to mean? Right? Is he saying that the relationship between there's a ship there's a ship, there's a sailor on the ship. The sailor is directing. The sailor's supposed to be the mind, and the mind is directing the body. And is this the point of this analogy?
Well, he's basically saying, I mean, there's this famous, English philosopher called Gilbert Ryle who wrote about the myth of the ghost in the machine.
Ah, yes.
Right. And Descartes actually, he's there before Ryle, and he actually says, well, it's the myth of the sailor in the ship. He's basically saying you're not separate from your body like a sailor might be with regard to a ship.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
You're actually completely intermingled with your body.
And I love this because, we were talking about this last week, exactly the intermingling of bodies out there in nature and in the external world. And here he's saying, okay, there's not only this intermingling of bodies, but there's the intermingling of mind and body.
Absolutely.
Right?
And he comes out with what we call in philosophy a counterfactual.
Yeah.
Right? A counterfactual is an example that is not the case. Right? It counters nature. Right?
Yep.
He says that if it were not the case that I was intermingled with my body, I, who am nothing but a thinking thing, would not feel pain when the body was hurt, but I would perceive the damage purely by the intellect, just as a sailor perceives by sight if anything in his ship is broken.
Yeah, exactly. Because this was the question that came up for me, and I think it's going to be one that's going to come up time and time again. It's like, what is the actual causal relationship between the mind and the body, right? And here he's saying very directly, it's like, well, they have to be directly related in this way. Otherwise, my experience of my back pain right now would just be an idea, not something that I'm actually feeling, right?
Well, I mean, it leads us straight into this question of the contrast in between the way in which the human mind feels pain and experiences pain. And this reminds me of that great analogy in the Republic. I think it's in Book 5 when Plato is about to argue that the ideal just city-state needs an army of lovers. And the way he argues this is he says the kind of unity, the kind of patriotism, the kind of full citizenship and devotion to your city that I want to see is the same as we get inside a body. Because he says, you can just have a cut on your little finger and it's kind of totally unimportant. It's just your little finger. It's just a tiny cut. Oh. But my God, the pain bothers you, right? You care about your little finger, Val.
Oh, absolutely. Isn't it? It's a very interesting phenomenon where, what seems like the slightest flesh wound or the smallest ones are produce the most unbearable pain, sometimes compared to even larger wounds, right?
Yeah, we're not like the Black Knight in Monty Python and the Holy Grail saying it's just a flesh wound.
Oh, no, I'm complaining about it non-stop. I've accidentally, pricked a finger or something like that, and it's like that pain. It's like all of the attention of my mind is focused on this very small part of my body, right?
Yeah, and again, with his counterfactuals, he makes a comparison in between us and this supposed being who's has intellect in relationship to a body like a sailor in a ship.
Yeah.
And this led me immediately to think about, robots,
Yeah.
Do robots feel pain?
Do androids dream of electric sheep?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So here we are, right? What he's basically done in this passage is he's given the lie to centuries of carping critics and commentators who tarred him with the brush of dualism. How dare they, Val? How dare they?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair to the critics, it has taken Descartes a tremendously long amount of time to get to the fact that he is not a dualist, given how long and how many times he emphasized the difference, one might say, rather than the strict division that he's accused of with dualism. It has taken him a long time to start trying to think about this unity, but to be fair to Descartes and respect his method and his approach of the meditations, right, we needed to establish a whole bunch of other facts to be thinking about the unity of the mind and the body, and he's doing this precisely through nature.
He's
right?
doing this in order. There's an order of ideas.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right, as the great commentator Marcel Guéroult told us. But the point is that he hasn't argued. He never said the mind and the body are separate.
Yeah.
He just said they're different, right?
Yeah.
But Val, just because two substances are different,
Yeah.
even ontologically different,
Yeah.
right, doesn't mean they can't get along.
Exactly. It doesn't mean that they don't have a causal relation, and it's I think this is very important and something that's very easily forgotten, He's just making a difference. He's saying that the mind does do different things than the body. They have different kind of capabilities. The mind is indivisible thinking thing. The body is divisible, etc. But he's just saying that they're different, not that they're entirely separate, right?
They're different, but they can get along, right?
Yeah.
It's a little bit like marriage.
A little bit like marriage. Or friendship or other kinds of relationships, right? Isn't that the kind of, the world that we live in, celebrate our differences, everyone can get along, be intermingled in all sorts of configurations, right?
I don't know about that, Val, because there are going to be some nasty consequences of this intermingling later on in the meditation.
There's always just when I feel like he's resolved and answered all of the problems that I have, he then goes, okay, now that I have this intermingling between mind and body, all those centuries of critics calling me a dualist, you all be damned. But now I have a different problem that I'm going to have to investigate.
We haven't even gotten to the second teaching of nature yet, right, Val?
Oh, my God. Oh, that's
Professor Nature has a second teaching for us.
Yes.
And what is that? It's that various other bodies exist in the vicinity of my body.
Yes.
And we already knew that, right? We already knew that in our moment of paranoia, right? We knew they existed, right? And he says some of these are to be sought out and some of them are to be avoided.
Oh. So not all bodies are friendly. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Val, there are pleasant, desirable bodies, right?
Yeah.
But there are also nasty and revolting bodies right next to me.
Oh, I'm right here, Ol. You don't have to say that.
You might want to know, Val, how is it that we can tell the difference in between the pleasant and agreeable bodies and the nasty and disagreeable bodies, right?
Well, surely it's got to have to do something with this pleasure-pain distinction that he set up earlier, right? Surely it's the pleasant bodies we must be attracted towards the things that bring us pleasure, and avoid the things that bring us pain, maybe?
Absolutely, Val. Just trust your senses.
Just trust your senses.
Go with your senses.
Yep. Trust the body.
That's right. He writes, from the fact that I perceive by my senses a great variety of colors, sounds, smells, and tastes, as well as differences in heat, hardness, and the like, I am correct in inferring that the bodies which are the source of these various sensory perceptions possess differences corresponding to them, though perhaps not resembling them.
Okay, and so these are the qualities. Now because we were talking about at the beginning of the episode where it's like, okay, there is the external world. We're not quite sure what form it takes, but now we have a method or a means of differentiating them according to the sense perceptions that accord to them and the feelings of pleasure and pain that we attach to them. Is this now that we're starting? Is this the external world that we're finally getting? It's the external world. There are things that cause me pleasure. There are things that cause me pain.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But they and this is like another one of the key passages with regard to this whole accusation of dualism, right? He says, the fact that some of the perceptions are agreeable to me while others are disagreeable makes it quite certain, right? He's got certainty there, that my body, or rather my whole self, insofar as I am a combination of body and mind, can be affected by the various beneficial or harmful bodies which surround me, right?
Yep.
So again, take that, all you carping critics and commentators.
Yep. There's a whole. What was once divided into two is now one again.
It's a whole self. It's a combination of body and mind. That's the Cartesian subject.
Ah.
And what's more, Val, It's pleasure and pain that lead us on the great path towards holism.
It's a pleasure, and I mean, and this just reminds me of, isn't he, like restaging the kind of the myth present in the Symposium?
That's right. Now that you say that.
Yeah. Because what is it Aristophanes?
It's Aristophanes.
Aristophanes tells us this beautiful story, of course, in the Socratic or Platonic dialogue of the Symposium. Tells us this incredible myth, right? Of
it's a theory of love.
it's
right?
a theory. It's a theory of love, but it's also an account of all of our desires and our pleasure and our pain. Because originally human beings were once complete.
That's right.
Whole bodies, right?
We were round.
We were round. We had 4 arms. We had 4 legs, 4 heads, 2 sets of genitals.
Genitals all over the place.
We had it all. We had everything. But the problem was that we were too powerful, right? And
it's a story of hubris.
it's an incredible story of hubris where apparently, because we were rolling around all the time, we kept trying to roll up Mount Olympus and we were disturbing the gods. We're causing all kinds of ruckus and fuss.
We've got a skateboard bowl all over again.
Exactly. And so what do the gods do? They go, right, I've had enough of this. We're cutting you in half, right?
That sounds very bloody.
No
very
more.
Violent.
No more of this. We're going to fashion you into 2 separate entities.
Incomplete entities.
Incomplete entities, right? There's this fundamental division, right? But to bring this kind of thing back to the ideas of pleasure and pain, once divided, these half-human beings, or what we are now, they spent the rest of their existence seeking out their other half, right?
So this is like the source of that whole idea of your partner as your soulmate.
Yes, exactly. The one, the whole idea of, I'm looking for the one, I know when I've found them, and of course there's all these other kind of terrible details about pleasure and pain because one of the things that happens before we get kind of rearranged is that in our desire to try and reconnect with the other, we lost all of our other desires for anything else, right? In our desire to become one again, we forgot to eat. We started ignoring the lessons of the body, right? And what would happen was we would starve to death, right? In each other's arms. It's quite a terrible foundational myth for love, but it just made me think of that in this kind of description, right?
Well, absolutely. And I think that, pleasure and pain go a long, long way. So it's Professor Nature, but Professor Nature has his kinds of his teaching assistants, right?
Yes.
So let's say pain and pleasure, they're the 2 teaching assistants, the TAs for Professor Nature. Right?
Yeah.
And what do they teach me? Not only do they teach me that I have a body, but I am intermingled with that body, right? And not only that, but I am surrounded by bodies that most certainly do have real properties in them that warn me via my perceptions as to whether they are harmful or beneficial. In other words, pleasure and pain bring the whole world back together with my body via these surrounding bodies. And so what has Descartes discovered, Val? It's the environment.
It is the environment, right? He's talking about the external world and our place within it, right?
People think that Descartes is a mentalist.
No.
I'm here to tell you he is an environmentalist, man.
Yeah, well, exactly, because it's like these are the things that nature is the one that is teaching us how to be in the world. We're intermingled.
You can't escape it, Val.
You can't do anything without it.
Any pleasure, any pain, that's a sign of your intermingling.
But I don't know, there's another frustration that I have in kind of, I suppose, Descartes', depiction of the world, because, one of the reasons why he's earned himself so many critics over the centuries is he's gone and doubted away. What's he do in the first meditation? He goes and he doubts away the external world. Everything about it, right?
Absolutely.
And he said, and then we've gone on this long, arduous journey trying to reconstruct the world that he's doubted away, right? In this bit, what's the amazing kind of conclusion that he's telling me now? It's okay, we have the external world, and the external world is just comprised of pleasure and pain. Is that That's the world I'm supposed to be happy with. This is the reconstructed universe.
Pleasure and pain are the teaching assistants. They're not the whole world themselves.
Okay.
They're like your conduits to the whole world.
Right. So there, it's those experiences that allow me to reconstruct more and more things about the external world, right?
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
And I have to say here that, he's going to go through a series of complications and other problems, but this is actually his answer, Val,
Yes.
right? How do we arrive at certain knowledge of the external world, of the nature of external bodies?
Yeah.
Well, we do have to actually trust our senses. He's going to explain why a little bit later on and in more
Yeah.
detail how this mechanism actually works. But he's basically saying that you have these two teaching assistants,
Yeah.
pleasure and pain. You've got to trust them because they're the ones that plug you into or
Yeah.
intermingle you with,
Yeah.
right, this external world. But again, Val,
Oh.
at this moment,
Yeah.
you said that philosophy was an eternal machine for creating problems.
Oh no! Are you
Here
trying
we
to?
go again.
Are you telling me?
Here we go again.
What has happened? I thought that nature contains some truths, which implies that nature must also contain some falsehoods.
Absolutely. And these falsehoods, they're going to go under the name of imposter teachings of nature.
Imposter teachings of nature.
Have you seen
Falsehoods.
that film with Leonardo DiCaprio, Catch Me If You Can, and Tom Hanks?
I never saw that one. It was one of those ones that was always on like free to air TV growing because I grew up at a time when, we didn't have digital services. And I think maybe you did too.
Absolutely.
Did you even have color TV?
Yes, I did. Thanks very much.
But so there are imposter teachings of nature.
Yeah, well, like in that film, like it starts out, Leonardo DiCaprio plays this con man, and it's a real story.
Yes.
And he starts off being a con man by actually impersonating a substitute teacher. He's a
Yes.
new kid at school. Substitute teacher hasn't arrived. He sees all the kids are acting up. He's dressed very well, and he thought, "Well, I can do this. I'm going to
Yeah.
act like a teacher. I've seen how they act, right?"
Yeah.
And so here we've got imposter professors of nature, right?
Oh, okay.
So what does this mean? This means that sometimes we think we're taught something by nature,
Yep.
but it's not the case. Nature never said that.
Oh.
So we have this dangerous character, this imposter professor. It's a little bit like the evil demon of Meditation 1 because
Yeah.
it's deceiving us. What does it teach? Well, there are 3 fake teachings of the imposter professor.
Yeah, but what? Yeah, so there's 3 fake teachings, but I find this very interesting in Descartes' kind of method, where he's like introduced these imposter teachings of nature, but I find this very hard to square with his statement that nature is created by God, and God is not a deceiving God, right? So it's like I'm very interested to see how he's going to articulate what these imposter teachings are. So there's 3 of them. What do we got?
We've got, first of all, there are empty spaces. There are voids.
Oh, there are voids. Right?
Subject of your PhD thesis.
It is. Yes, it is indeed. I spent a lot of time in the void, and let me tell you, it's chock-a-block. It's full of stuff, contrary to what Descartes is going to tell us.
Right. So he's going to basically say, in a space in which nothing is occurring to stimulate my senses, so basically school.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
For all of our younger listeners, that's
Yep.
like going to school. Nothing is occurring to stimulate your
Yep.
senses.
No, it's just
right?
it's just the eternal babble of some poor substitute teacher. Nowhere near as engaging, perhaps, as another film that came out in the early 2000s that I watched obsessively, The School of Rock, one of the great stories of substitute teaching.
Well,
surpass-
there were things to stimulate the senses. in
Exactly,
that-
but
that
we have to
substitute
think
teacher.
of Mr. Dewey, who is the original teacher that gets substituted, and yes,
So here we are. He says basically, naturally, we have this kind of fake teach, like our instinct, like nature seems to teach us that just because there's nothing occurring in a space to stimulate our senses, that means there's nothing there. That means that it's a void, that it's empty space. And we know that for
Yes.
Descartes, in this fantastic book called The World,
Yeah.
he will actually create this very beautiful model of the solar system in which everything is working through whirlpools, basically.
Yep.
And he will show that in his model, there are no voids in the universe.
Okay, so there's no voids in the universe. So how can they be? Oh, so it's the imposter making us believe that there are.
Yeah.
Oh,
Second fake teaching.
yep.
My ideas of the properties of bodies actually resemble those real properties.
Ah, so
Right.
it feels like he's going, like he just keeps going because he set the bar so high for himself with certain knowledge, he keeps going back into these moments of doubt, right? I thought that we had, we like, oh yeah, okay, so this
No,
is something
you had correspondence. He'd given you correspondence.
Yes,
He said that your sense perceptions do correspond to real
to
properties.
something, but
They don't look like them.
they don't look like them.
Right?
Like,
So
it can be
I'm
mistakes.
seeing that lampshade over there as white, right?
Yeah.
But out there in reality, it's
Yeah.
not necessarily white. The reason
Yes.
I'm seeing it as white is because I have these particularly configured sense organs,
Yeah.
my eyes, right? They work in a certain way. You bring a cat in here, you bring a dog in here, you bring a cockroach in here.
Yeah.
They're going to see that as a completely different shade, right?
Yes, it's going to be a very completely different mental organization. Okay.
Right. So same thing with taste. He basically
Yeah.
says, look, just because something tastes bitter to you,
Yeah.
right? So my kids, didn't like bitter tastes at first, or
Yeah.
you might think that curry is actually hot. It's not that hot.
Super spicy. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to somebody who's Indian; they'll tell you this is a joke.
Yeah,
It's
this
just
is
for white people.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Because he says that what you perceive to be a hot curry, that's not actually a property that's out there in the world, the hotness
Yeah.
of a curry. It's relative to the capacities of your tongue and how you've been trained to filter taste, to interpret taste, right?
Yeah, so we're really back into like the idea of our own finitude, right? There's a kind of a defectiveness in the organization of our, of our sense organs. We can have different configurations of finitude, right? That may be the source of why we make mistakes about things.
Yeah, and I think that everybody, even outside philosophy, we get some kind of like hint of this when we argue. We've been through this before, this example, but you argue with somebody, you're redecorating the actual the room, the lounge, or whatever like that, and you have an argument about what kind of color
Oh,
you want to decorate, and then like you
Yeah.
do choose a color. Let's say let's go for sky blue or cobalt blue,
Yeah.
right? And then you argue with your partner: is that cobalt blue or not?
Ah,
That particular pot of paint,
it's
right?
it's a terrible argument because no one can decide even on the name of the color, right?
Right. So you
yeah.
accept that different people see the colors differently.
Yeah.
Descartes and Locke go one step further. They
Yeah.
basically say there are no colors out there in the world. That's just a function of the relationship between external objects and your eyes.
Yes.
Right. It's a secondary property. What's out there in the world are just primary properties. It's
Yeah.
just matter in motion,
Yes.
just
Okay.
configurations of atoms. Right.
Right.
So third teaching, and this is a silly one, right? He basically
Yeah.
says, nature teaches us to think that when we see the moon and we think it's about the size of a 50-cent piece, that it is actually that size.
No,
right?
of course, yeah, and this is of course going back to the original problem that he had with the sense perceptions, right? I make these mistakes in my depth perception all of the time, and it's only through my kind of use of my rationality, right, that I can arrive at the fact that the moon isn't actually the size of a 50-cent piece, but considerably larger. I don't know how many 50-cent pieces could fit inside of the moon, but through the use of mathematics, we could know that actually.
Numbers again, Val, numbers.
So the universe really is mathematical.
So how is he going to deal with these imposter teachings of nature, right?
Yeah.
So you said you were looking forward to see how he's going to sort this out, because these are judgments that we make quite naturally, quite instinctually.
Yeah.
Like, there is a void. That sandwich really is tasting quite disgusting in itself, right? And what he does is he carries out one of these typical operations for him. He carries out what we call triage in French. I think it's also a term in English, isn't it? That's triage. That's what you do in an emergency room in a hospital.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
The triage nurses and things like that.
Right. It's a selection process. He's going to identify the right candidate. In other words, what he's going to sort out is exactly what it is that Professor Nature teaches us.
Yes.
Because we've been making a mistake with these imposters, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So how does he do this correctly? He says, look, there are three different kinds of knowledge that appear to come to us from nature, right?
Yeah.
There's knowledge that comes from our mind alone,
Yeah.
like knowledge by the natural lights, like logical truths.
Yeah, and so he gives us a very interesting example of this. He goes, this knowledge that comes from my mind alone is that my perception that what is done cannot be undone.
Sounds like he's got some regrets, Val.
Yeah, it seems like what has come to pass can no longer be undone.
It's like a Greek tragedy.
Yeah, actually, it reminds me, when we were talking to Nala, I cited a poem about by the Sufi poet Omar Khayyam and his Rubaiyat, and he's got a very beautiful passage which I didn't cite, but it's just come to mind about what is done cannot be done, and it goes, "The moving finger writes, and having writ, moves on. nor all thy piety nor wit can call it back to cancel half a line, nor thy tears wash out a word of it.
Wow, that is beautiful.
Yeah, it's a stunning poem. I really recommend anyone to go and get a copy and have a read.
So there you go. You have the knowledge of truths that come from our mind alone, logical truths, right?
Yeah.
Then we have knowledge that comes from the body alone,
Okay.
right? Like gravity.
Yes.
Things move downwards, right?
Yep. Don't have much of a choice in that one.
Yeah. And then finally he says, this is the candidate I'm looking for. There is knowledge, I quote, that God has bestowed upon me as a combination of mind and body.
Oh.
Professor Nature is that kind of teacher. Professor Nature speaks to us only as a combination of mind and body.
Not separate. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is again Descartes saying I'm not a dualist, right?
No, it's saying that there's a certain kind of knowledge that I only get as in a totality, right? Not as a division, right?
How do I know as a whole, Val?
Nature.
He's wrapping his arms around that mountain over again.
He's putting, he's telling, just let me get my arms around you.
Give us a hug. Just give me a hug.
Please,
Yeah.
teach me.
So, and do you know what, Professor Nature, now that we have identified, now we've been through the selection process, we've been through the triage, we've basically dismissed the imposters. Will the true Professor Nature please stand up?
Yep.
Well, it's the professor who teaches us as a whole.
Yep.
Do you know what that professor teaches us, Val?
I feel like this is a very peculiar thing that has maybe harked. What is the word I'm even trying to use there? Back to something that I was a bit disgruntled about before. Professor Nature teaches us to avoid what induces pain and to seek out what induces feelings of pleasure.
You what?
Hey, don't look at me. Luna's having exactly the same experience I did. Is that the big teaching of nature, that there's things that cause pleasure and things that cause pain?
This is like Jeremy Bentham. This is like utilitarianism.
Oh my! We have spent
How long have we spent doing this, Val?
I just what I don't even what episode are we even up to? 11.
That's right.
Yep. And this is Descartes' big reveal.
6 mind-bendingly difficult meditations that we've been dragging Luna through just to arrive at the bleeding obvious.
Yep.
Avoid what induces pain, Val.
Yep.
And embrace what induces feelings of pleasure.
Oh, okay. Yep. So this is really this is the practical side of philosophy, right? This is the wisdom which the arduous journey into philosophical education will finally allow you to understand, right? Avoid pain, go towards pleasure. Years of study.
That's right. PhDs, both of us, 2 PhDs in this room.
Yep.
And this is what we've come up with.
And this is the eternal truth. This is the clear and distinct wisdom that nature is. He's reduced nature into a pleasure and pain machine.
That's right. And this is one of these take-home insights. Often, when you watch a show, they'll say, "Don't try this at home." Descartes is basically saying, do try this at home. Yeah. This is what we all try all the time, and it's fine. This is what Professor Nature teaches you.
Exactly. Give it a good Aussie go.
Right. But, Descartes is saying, look, it might sound a little bit naive. It might sound a little bit basic, but this is precisely what I need. I am trying to found the entirety of the modern sciences. Yep. Do you mind? Yeah. Which I'm also inventing. Thanks very much.
Excuse
Look
me.
at my goddamn Cartesian coordinates. That's me. Thanks very much.
This guy.
Yeah, algebraic geometry, right? I am trying to give us the rock upon which we can build our modern universe of technology, right?
Yep.
And so it behooves me and it behooves you to go back to the basics.
Yes.
If you want a foundation, go back to the basics.
It's the Archimedean point, right? You need this point to reconstruct the rest of the universe, right?
He's taking us back to a home truth, a basic truth that all of us can access as God's creatures.
Yes.
God is good.
God is good.
God made you.
And therefore, God can direct you in how to go from pleasure to pain, or to go towards pleasure and avoid pain.
Avoid the painful, embrace the pleasant.
Yes. Okay. Right. Sure. But I don't know. I feel like he's pulling a fast one here. It can't be that simple. We can't have spent all this time trying to discuss this text, as we said before, dragging Luna along with us. I don't want to say kicking and screaming, but there has to be something else. This can't be this simple.
Well, Val, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but it's never going to be this simple.
Oh, no.
Right.
What?
The great problem machine is grinding its gears again, and
Oh.
it generates a new and even worse problem that we have to deal with.
Okay. What is this new problem, right? Okay.
I think, Val, we're going to have to conclude with this because this is such a hairy problem. It's such a wicked problem
Yeah.
that we're going to need an entire new episode 12, to actually deal with it.
Yeah.
Right. It is sometimes the case, one must admit, Descartes points out, that nature itself leads us into error.
Of course. I did say before that nature contains some truths, which means it also must contain some errors.
He's going to have to go back to his theory of error that he developed in Meditation 4.
Yeah.
Right.
And ask, how is it natural for us to mistake what nature teaches us and for us to misjudge?
That's right.
Are we the site of error again?
We are.
Oh.
This is going to be a very painful, ultimate stage in our journey, Val.
I was so excited at the beginning of this episode. I thought we were done. I thought we were dusted. But no. Just when I thought I'd seen the light, God is good, the external world's out there, God created it. I could finally depend on everything that was coming to me through my senses.
Tame that unruly horse, Val.
Something wicked this way comes.
Get your will under control. We're not there yet.
Oh yes, no, yeah, exactly. This is a great example of my will going far beyond my understanding. Right?
Slow down. Back to the text.
But I'm afraid.
Back to the problem machine.
Back to the problem machine that's going. Does it ever end?
Dear listeners, we'll be very happy to have you on board for the next episode.
As usual, it's been absolutely lovely. I hope you tune in next week.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.